Hello and welcome back to Cinnamon Sanctuary. Today we are making oxtail stew, authentic Jamaican oxtail stew, which is going to result in the most flakiest, softest meat falling off the bones and is guaranteed to make your kitchen smell like some tasty stuff is happening in there. So please stay tuned if you want to find out how I go about making my oxtail stew. See you later. Bye. So here we have our rainbow of ingredients all sprawled across the kitchen surface. There's a few spices needed for this recipe, quite a few dry ingredients as well as fresh ones, but all of them will be listed in the description box, so don't worry about this. I'll make sure that they're all listed so you find out what I've used and the measurements. I'm just going to go ahead now and season the meat. I'm using about 1 kilo of oxtail that has been chopped, and I've washed this in water and vinegar and sort of patted it dry with a towel. And we're just going to season this and let it marinate for about 2 hours. Preferably you want it to marinate overnight, but if you don't have time, 1 to 2 hours is fine. And you let it marinate in the fridge and come back to it once it's done. So far I've added some salt. I'm going ahead and adding a little bit of black pepper, or should I say a lot of black pepper, because I like it. Some all-purpose seasoning, Aromat Knorr, my favorite of all time. I never go without this. I went crazy in the supermarket the other day and went ahead and bought about 6 of them because they're so hard to find nowadays. I'm also adding some oxtail seasoning. So the oxtail seasoning contains herbs and I think it was thyme, parsley, and some all-purpose type, I'm not sure. But it's my first time using this and I quite liked it. And I'm also adding some curry powder. We're not adding too much of curry powder because we're not making curry oxtail. We're just using the curry powder as a seasoning. So I would have just added in probably 1 teaspoon. Also going in with some mixed herbs, some Caribbean mixed herbs, and why not? It doesn't hurt. I'm adding in some parsley, as I do with most recipes. I really like this parsley because of the flavor. It really works with meat especially as well. And I'm just sprinkling this all over the meat. And I'm just adding in some thyme. So I'm just getting rid of the leaves and sort of, stripping the leaves off the stalks and adding it into the meat because I don't want the stalks into the meat. And I'm going in with my spring onions and garlic. So I think I use about 3 cloves of garlic here, and this is a whole spring onion. Um, I mean, it looks like I've left a bit there, but I ended up adding it in at the end as well. And I'm going in with some soy sauce, some dark and rich soy sauce. So I think approximately 2 tablespoons of soy sauce. And this needs no introduction, a bit of ketchup, about 1 tablespoon of ketchup, and a sprinkle of oil just to bring everything together. And now I'm just going to mix this all up nicely, make sure it's nice and combined, and then cover it up in cling film and let it marinate. I've let the meat marinate for exactly 2 hours and now it's time to sear the meat. So I'm adding in a couple of tablespoons of oil to which I'm also going to add sugar. So I think I used about 2.5 tablespoons of sugar. And the idea here is to let the sugar caramelize in the oil, make sure that it's nice and dark and adopts this bubbly consistency, at which point we will then add the meat and let it sear or sort of brown on both sides before adding some liquid to let it stew. So I'm just stirring this all together. You have to make sure that you keep stirring it because once the meat is once the sugar is caramelizing, it does get quite sticky and you don't want it to stick to the pan. So just keep stirring until you find something looking like this. So you see the sugar has already darkened. It's quite dark in color now, and that's when you know that it's ready for the meat to be added in. So I'm just adding in the meat now, and we are going to let this sear and cook on each side. So I think the meat here cooked for about 7 to 8 minutes on each side. So you make sure that one side is finished before turning it over. So the meat has been browning for just under 10 minutes now, and it's a perfect time to turn it over now. So you see, you are looking for this color, this nice golden brown color, and it's amazing because the caramelized sugar has given it this effect. So don't think this is burnt. This is exactly what you're looking for in terms of color. Obviously, you're not cooking the whole meat. You're just kind of cooking, browning it on one side and then turning it over. So that's what you're looking for. So you just turn it around and let it cook on the other side. Now that the meat has been turned over, it's a good time to add your onions and red pepper. I could have done this at the beginning actually, but I didn't want this to interfere with the caramelization process. So I thought once that's done and the meat has started to cook, it's a better time to add the onions and pepper, which are actually releasing a really good flavor at the same time. So you just add this in and make sure it's combined underneath and let it cook. The meat is now brown on both sides. The kitchen is smelling amazing, just like a dream. There's a lot of chemistry happening in that pot, as you can see. And the meat is now ready to receive some water. So what I've done is the container that I used to marinate the meat in, I added some water to rinse it out to make sure that we don't waste any of the spices. We can use all of the spices and make sure that we don't miss out on any of them. And I just added this in. And in terms of the amount of water needed, I don't submerge the meat entirely, but I just ensure that the water is at meat level, and that should be fine for you to simmer the meat. So I'm just stirring this all together, and then we let this simmer for about 2 hours to begin with, at which point we will then add some fresh vegetables. So our stew has been simmering for exactly 2 hours, but I went in every half hour just to check on it and kind of stir it and make sure that there's nothing burning underneath. And it has been simmering on low heat, I should add as well. And throughout, I added one Scotch bonnet actually, which you can see there is already nicely shriveled. And I didn't add this at the beginning because I didn't want this to turn too spicy or was worried that it would pop. But I left it in for about half an hour to 45 minutes, and now I'm taking it out because I've received all the flavors that I wanted of the Scotch bonnet. And I'm going in with some celery and some carrots by way of vegetable. This is optional, guys. You don't have to do this, but I really love oxtail with vegetables, especially carrots and celery. And the celery is really nice when it comes to flavoring the meat and the meat stew. So I added this in and I'm just stirring this in all together, and we're going to let this stew for a further 30 minutes. The smell in the kitchen has reached epic proportions, guys. Honestly, it smells so amazing. So it's been half an hour later, and I want to go in with some butter beans because I love oxtail with butter beans, but the butter beans are optional as well. But I suggest, if you like butter beans, I suggest that you add them. It gives them, it also acts a little bit as a thickening agent, but it's very tasty with it. I love it. And I'm just stirring that in together. The meat is really, really tender at this point. As I said, the kitchen was smelling amazing, and you don't want to leave the butter beans in there for longer than 5 minutes, no longer than 5 minutes, because you don't want them to mash up in the stew. It's basically you just want to warm it up a little bit, and then you can turn your stew off. So this is it. This is the end of our meal. After all this hard work, we are presented with this beauty right there. The butter beans were cooking there for no longer than 5 minutes. So I'm going to turn this off in a minute, but I'm just trying to show you here what it all looks like. The meat is falling off the bones. The kitchen smells absolutely amazing, and at this point I'm just dreaming of what I'm going to have this with. We ended up having this with white rice and some plantain on the side, as well as some vegetables. Well, you can have this with anything. You can have this with white rice. You can even have this with potatoes or the like. And I'm just showing you the meat in here. It's so tender. So it's been cooking in total for about 2.5 hours, and it was all that was needed to make sure that the meat is nice and tender. And here is a nice zoom in of the whole stew, looking amazing, as you can see. Oh, look at this. This is just there. Yeah, I'm just showing off how tender the meat is. So you see, it's falling off the bone. It's very, very soft, as you can see. Here you go. So thank you very much for watching, everyone. I'm so grateful for each and every one of you watching my videos. Please don't forget to subscribe, leave a comment and a like. It really helps. And I'll see you very, very soon on my next video. Thank you very much, guys. Bye.